Namo Ramana. A very warm welcome to all the devotees for Raman Kendra Delhi's Sunday satsang with Raghav ji. I shall now request Mr. Krishnan at Raman Kendra Delhi to initiate puja. Sir, over to you.
राष्ट्रमुदारय अधिदिष्टा विदन्यतः अदरे सन्दुषद्रवः इन्द्रैव वृत्रः दृष्टः सुमुहूर्तो सुप्रतिष्ठितमस्तु हृद्यास्महव्ये नमसो वसत्या मित्रं देवं मित्रदेयन्नोऽस्तु अनुराधानविषा वर्धयन्तः शरञ्जीवेन् शरदस्य वीराः दीर्घायुष्यवस्तु वरदरं विष्णुं सुवर्णं सुदर्भुजं सर्ववदनं ध्याये सर्वविघ्नवशान्तये ॐ भुवः ॐ सुवः ॐ महः ॐ जनः ॐ तपः ॐ सत्यं ॐ सविदुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ ज्योतिर्षः इदं ब्रह्मा भूर्भुवस्सुरो नमोपात्त नमस्क रुद्रक्षयद्वारा श्रीपरमेश्वर प्रीत्यर्थं तदेव लग्नं सुदिनं तदेव ताराबलम् इन्द्रबलं तदेव विद्याबलं दैवबलं तदेव लक्ष्मीपतेः अङ्गुलीगं स्मरामि करिष्यमाणस्य कर्मणः निर्विघ्नेन परिसमाप्त्यर्थम् आदौ श्रीमहागणपतिपूजां करिष्ये अभौभस्पृश्य या ब्रह्मलोकात् आलोकात् आदिशेषात् आलोकात् योगपर्वतात् विवसन्ति विजा देवास् तेभ्यो नित्यं नमो नमः। ॐ घण्टपूजा गणपतिं हवामहे कविं कवीनां ववस्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणस्पतः आनशृण्वन् मोदिभिस्सेदसादनम् अस्मात् निद्राबिम्बे सुमुखं महागणपतिं ध्यायामि महागणपतिं आवाहयामि श्रीमहागणपतिं आवाहयामि ॐ श्रीमहागणपते नमः। आसनार्थं सदा समर्पयामि वाद्यं समर्पयामि अर्घ्यं समर्पयामि आचमनीयं समर्पयामि स्नापयामि स्नानानन्तरम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि वस्त्रोद्य वस्त्रान् समर्पयामि दिव्यपरिमलगन्धान् धारयामि इंद्रसूरीकरान् समर्पयामि शोभनक्षतान् समर्पयामि पुष्पमालान् समर्पयामि पुष्पैः पूजयामि ॐ सुमुखाय नमः ॐ एकदन्ताय नमः ॐ कपिलाय नमः ॐ दशकन्नकाय नमः ॐ लम्बोदराय नमः ॐ विकटाय नमः ॐ विघ्नराजाय नमः ॐ गणाधिपाय नमः ॐ धूमकेतवे नमः ॐ गणाध्यक्षाय नमः ॐ बालचन्द्राय नमः ॐ गजाननाय नमः ॐ प्रचण्डाय नमः ॐ सूतकर्णाय नमः ॐ हेरम्बाय नमः ॐ स्कन्दपूर्वजाय नमः क्षिप्रप्रसादाय नमः ॐ मोक्षसिद्धये नमः ॐ मुद्राय नमः ॐ मुद्राय नमः ॐ चिन्तामणये नमः ॐ विनये नमः ॐ सुमङ्गलाय नमः ॐ बीजाय नमः ॐ आशापूरकाय नमः ॐ वरदाय नमः ॐ शिवाय नमः ॐ काश्यपाय नमः ॐ नन्दाय नमः ॐ आचासिद्धाय नमः ॐ दुन्दीविनायकाय नमः नानाविध परिमलपत्रपुष्पाणि समर्पयामि ॐ धूपदीपार्थं शतान् समर्पयामि ॐ धूपदीपार्थं शतान् समर्पयामि ॐ दीपानन्तरम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् देव सविदप्रसुवा यन्पट्टेन परिषञ्चामि मनो वस्तर्नमसि ॐ प्राणाय स्वाहा ॐ प्राणाय स्वाहा ॐ ज्ञानाय स्वाहा ॐ ज्ञानाय स्वाहा ॐ ज्ञानाय स्वाहा ॐ मानाय स्वाहा ॐ यमने स्वाहा हेमहे उत्तपानीयं समर्पयामि वेन्दरम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि कदलीफलं समर्पयामि ॐ ॐ नमो राघवते नमो भगवते नमः प्रमदे नमस्ते यत्पुरोदराय नमस्काराय श्रीनाथेश्वराय नमो नमः पूरयिराजं सन्दर्शयामि नीराजनम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि मन्त्रपुष्पं समर्पयामि वर्णपुष्पं समर्पयामि समस्तोपचारान् समर्पयामि वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा अविघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा ॐ शान्तिरवं सन्नमदनं ध्याये सर्वविघ्नवशान्तये कुम्भुवः पुंसुवः उम्मः उञ्जनः उन्तपः ऊकुं सत्यम् ॐ सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ओमापः तो दीर्घः कृतं ब्रह्म पूर्ववस्वरो अमोपात्त समस्त रुदक्षयद्वारा श्रीपरमेश्वर प्रीत्यर्थं शुभे शोभने मुहूर्ते अद्य ब्रह्मणः द्वितीयपराब्धे श्वेतवराह कल्पे वैवस्वत मन्वन्तरे अष्टाविंशतितमे कलियुगे प्रमे पादे अम्बोद्भीपे भारतवर्षे भरतखण्डे मेरोः दक्षिणे पार्श्वे प्रभवादि षष्ठी संवत्सराणां मध्ये विन्ध्यस्य उत्तरे आर्यावर्त एकदेशे इन्द्रप्रस्थ महाक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे दक्षिणवाहिन्याः यमुनायाः पश्चिमे तीरे विक्रमशक बौद्ध अवतारे बार्हस्पत्यमानेन समादीनां षष्ट्याः संवत्सराणां मध्ये नलनामसंवत्सरे सौरचान्द्रमानाभ्यां शोभकृतिनामसंवत्सरे उत्तरायणे ग्रीष्मऋतु विघ्नमासे क्लपक्षे भानुवासरयुक्तायां रम्यां उत्तरानक्षत्रयुक्तायां उत्तरनक्षत्रयुक्तायां योग विष्णुकर्ण एवं गुण विशेषण विशिष्टायाम् अस्यां तमानायाम् उत्तरा पुण्यतिरौ स्यां श्रीवर्तमानायां पुण्यतिरो श्री महर्षिभ्याम् अमोभाक्त समस्त रुद्रक्षयद्वारा श्रीपरमेश्वर प्रीत्यर्थम् अस्माकं सकुटुम्बानां क्षेमस्थैर्य वीर्यविजय आयुरारोग्य ऐश्वर्याणां विवृद्ध्यर्थं समस्त दुर्दशान्त्यर्थं तावच्छक्या अहं षोडशोपचार पूजां करिष्ये तदङ्गं कमलमकर्षि अष्टोत्रं करिष्ये अभावुपस्पृश्य कलशस्य मुखे विष्णुः कुण्डे रुद्रसमाश्रिता कूटे चतुर्वत्योदशागरा सर्वे तस्वीभावसुन्दरा उत्योदशागरा सर्वे तस्वीभावसुन्दरा अट्टं Now continue with Ramana Ashtotra Shatanamavali, page number 3. Aparsit Sutavari Rache, Yasmormi Matram Bhuvanam Samastam, Uvajidam Tam Ramanam Gaviram, Chintavinam Sri Chintayami, Om Mahase Namaha, Om Shekajata Yanamaha, Om Shri Ramana Yanamaha, Om Kudave Namaha, Om Kanda Samhidakara Yanamaha, Om Mahodose Namaha, ओम कारणोद्भवाय नमः ओम जगत्पितापराधाय नमः ओम श्री भूमिनाथस्थलोद्भिदाय नमः ओम पराशर गुरुतंसाय नमः ओम सुंदरार्पयबलाय नमः ओम गमनीय सुचारित्राय नमः ओम सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ओम सोनाचल महोलीनमानसाय नमः ओम स्वर्णहस्ताय नमः ओम श्रीमद्पादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ओम महाशक्ति निवादेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ओम परमार्थविदे नमः ओम दीप्राय नमः ओम त्रिपुरान्वेषिणे नमः ओम हिन्दुभूमिनां पितृमते नमः ओम विदूरेश्वर श्रवणशैलप्राप्ताय नमः ओम तपोमयाय नमः ओम दासीनाय नमः ओम महोयोगिने नमः ओम महोत्साहाय नमः ओम कुशाग्रदये नमः ओम शान्तसङ्कल्प सम्भरम्भाय नमः ओम कुसन्दृशे नमः ओम सवित्रे नमः ओम शिलाय नमः ओम तपत्विद सर्वाङ्गाय नमः ओम पुल्लाम्बुज विलोचनाय नमः ओम चन्द्रिकासितश्रीमण्डिदानमण्डलाय नमः ओम शूलवाड्यां समासीनाय नमः ओम शूलिलागिल विप्रमाय नमः ओम वेदवेदान्त तद्वज्ञाय नमः ओम चिन्मूर्तिने नमः ओम त्रिगुणादिगाय नमः ओम विरूपाक्ष गुहावासाय नमः ओम विराजलाकृतये नमः ओम उद्दीप्तः नयनाय नमः ओम पूर्णाय नमः ओम ऋषिदाचलताण्डवाय नमः ओम गम्भीराय नमः ओम परमाचार्याय नमः ओम सुप्रसन्नाय नमः ओम अभयप्रदाय नमः ओम दक्षिणः त्रिभाय नमः ओम धीराय नमः ओम दक्षिणभिमुखाय नमः ओम स्वराजे नमः ओम अकर्षये नमः ओम भगवते नमः ओम वीर्याय नमः ओम भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः ओम विमलाय नमः ओम दीर्घदर्शिने नमः ओम आप्ताय नमः ओम विमार्गप्रदर्शिकाय नमः ओम समदृशे नमः ओम सत्यदृशे नमः ओम सत्याय नमः ओम प्रशान्ताय नमः विक्रमाय नमः ओम सुकुमाराय नमः ओम सदानन्दाय नमः ओम ऋतुभाषिणे नमः ओम दयार्णवाय नमः ओम सोनाचल हर्बूद स्कन्दाश्रम निकेतनाय नमः ओम सद्दर्शनोपदेष्टे नमः ओम सर्वभक्त वृन्द परिवृताय नमः ओम गणेश श्रीलिङ्गेन सेविता प्रसरोमुखाय नमः ओम गीतोपदेश सारादि प्रसन्नसंसंशयाय नमः ओम वर्णाश्रम पदातीताय नमः ओम प्रसन्नाय नमः ओम सौम्याय नमः ओम आत्मपदे नमः ओम सर्वसद्गुणे नमः ओम आत्मारामाय नमः ओम महाभागाय नमः ओम औदर्मुक्तिविदिताय नमः सर्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ कर्णात्मन्दमोचकाय नमः ॐ मुक्तस्मृषण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसारवेदारकाय नमः ॐ शौनातीश्वरेन्द्रे नमः ॐ आर्धविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ निश्चितयप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ निसर्गिहातपसे नमः ॐ नमर्गुन्दराय नमः ॐ प्रकोपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ रुहाय नमः ॐ खण्डवाणगे नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगविषट्कराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः we now recite Bhagavan's Upadeshasaram. तत्पुराज्ञया प्राप्यते बलं कर्म किं परं कर्म तज्जडं धृतिमहोददौ पतनकारणं फलमशाश्वतं गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं नेच्छया कृतं चित्तशोधकं मुक्तिसाधकम् कायवाङ्मनः कार्यमुत्तमं पूजनं जपः चिन्तनं क्रमात् जगदीशदी युक्तसेवनम् अष्टमूर्तिभृत् देवपूजनम् उत्तमस्तवात् उच्चमन्ततः सिद्धजं जपः ज्ञानमुत्तमम् आज्यधारया श्रोतसासमं सरलचिन्तनं विरलदपरं भेदभावना सोऽहमित्यसौ भावनाविदा पावनीमता भावशून्य सद्भावसुस्थितिः भावनाबलात् भक्तिरुत्तमा वृत्सले मनः स्वस्थता क्रिया भक्तियोगभो आश्च निश्चितम् वायुरोदना लीयते मनः जालभक्षिवत् रोदसाधनं चित्तवायवा शिक्रियायुता शागयोद्वयी शक्तिमूलका लयविनाशने उभयरोदने लयगदम्बुन भवति नो मृदम् प्राणबन्धना लीनमानसम् एकचिन्तनान् नाशमेत्यतः अष्टमानसोत्कृष्टयोगिनः वृक्षमस्तिकिं स्वस्तितं यतः दृश्यवारिदं चित्तमात्मनः चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्ग आर्जवात् वृद्धयस्वहं वृद्धिमाश्रिता वृद्धयो मनो विद्यहं मनः अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वतः ऐवदत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाजवात् अयमहं दया पुरधिकृत्स्वयं परमपूर्णसत् इदमहं वदाः अभिद्यमन्वहम् अहमिलीनगे एलयसद्धया विग्रहेन्द्रिया प्राणदीतमः नागमेशद तज्जडं यश सत्त्वभासिगाः चित्तवेतरा सद्दया हि चेत् चित्तया वयम् ईशजीवयोर्वेषजीविता सत्त्वभावदो वस्तु केवलं वेशहानतः स्वात्मदर्शनम् ईशदर्शनं स्वात्मरूपतः आत्मसंस्थितिः स्वात्मदर्शनम् आत्मनिर्भयात् आत्मनिष्ठता ज्ञानवर्जिता अज्ञानहीन चेत् ज्ञानमस्ति किं ज्ञातुमन्तरं किं स्वरूपमे आत्मदर्शने अव्यया भवा अपूर्णचित्सुखं बन्धमुक्त्यदी तं परं सुखं विन्ददीगजी वस्तुदैविकः अहमभेदकं निजविवादकं महतितं तपो रमणवादियम् अहमभेदकं निजविवानकं महतितं तपो रमणवादियम्. क्षेमाय पुनरागमनाय च
Namo Ramana. A very warm welcome to all the devotees for Raman Kendra Delhi's Sunday satsang with Raghavji. Raghavji shall be speaking to us on the earliest set of instructions given by Bhagavan in his own handwriting, condensed in the form of Vichara Sangraha or self-inquiry, as preserved by Gambhiran Seshaya. This consists of a series of questions posed by the devotee between the years 1900 to 1902 and handwritten answers by Bhagavan. The topics include both the core practices of self-inquiry as well as practices supportive or helpful for self-inquiry. Raghavji has been very kindly addressing us on this book and of course a few others for the last more than 2 years. A quick background for a few new devotees who have joined us this evening. Raghavji is a devotee of Bhagwan Sri Raman Maharishi with a background of Vedanta study under various acharyas of Rishikesh and Uttarkashi over several years. After completing a degree in technology in 1993 and a few years of research in electronics, he was drawn to the exclusive pursuit of the path of self-inquiry. He was blessed to be closely associated with the Ramakrishna mission, Arshavidya tradition, and the Adi Shankara Brahma Vidyapeeth Uttarkashi. Since 2001, Raghavji divides his time between Uttarkashi and Tiruvannamalai. He occasionally shares what he has learned from the acharyas with fellow devotees. I shall now request Raghavji to address us. Over to you, sir.
Namaste and welcome to this satsang on Vichara Sangraha. Om Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavasyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Vande Shri Ramanashe Acharyasya Padabjam Yome Darshayadisham Bhantam Bhantamatitya. So we were studying with great care Bhagavan's words recorded in his earliest written answers. And I had mentioned how the words of the Acharyas are our guiding light in directly helping us arrive at what we truly are. So the approach or attitude we have towards these words are those of a pramana or a direct means of knowledge. So it's in that spirit that the words of the Guru are received by the students. And the Vichara Sangraha is very comprehensive because it deals with many deep questions which are also of a little philosophical nature, and at the same time a lot of emphasis on the key parts of the practice is also there. So that way we have both a comprehensive picture of what the whole framework of sadhana is, and also there is no loss of focus in helping us arrive at that truth of oneself in the form of the specific steps and practices that one is asked to pay attention to. So in the previous session, we saw the questions related to how the real renunciation consists of creating that space between the I thought, ahankara or ego-iti, they all mean the same. So how do I find that little space between myself as I truly am and this vyavaharika, empirical ahankara? Empirical means what we use in transactions. That is the sum total of all the roles we play. That is the ahankara. And so how do we find that space between that ahankara and oneself was what was under focus. And Bhagavan pointed out that the real renunciation or sannyasa is to find that space by which we stop purely taking ourselves to be the roles we play. Think very helpfully about this word, the roles we play, defining us. That's the ahankara part. And then what I truly am, setting aside these roles I play, that's where all the freedom, all the bliss, if you like, lies. And so that question was, what is true sannyasa? And Bhagavan had mentioned that it's not just the rejection of external objects, but the renunciation of the I thought. And that person who has renounced the I thought, what is meant by renunciation of the I thought? That's not another action, remember. You find that I'm not just the I thought. There is something more to me, to what I am, than just the I thought. You discover that fact. You discover that pre-existing fact about yourself, that you are, like I said, not just the roles you play. And so that is what is renunciation of the I thought. And when that is total and spontaneous, yes, that is the end of the journey. But till then, this renunciation of the I thought informs our sadhana. It is the keynote, so to speak, of the sadhana. And Bhagavan had answered in the question 14 of the Vichara Sangraha, which we discussed or studied last time, that when the mind is concentrated on some object, it does not observe other things, even though they may be proximate. So also, although a sage may perform any number of empirical acts, in reality, he performs nothing, because he makes the mind rest in the self without letting the I thought arise. So what this means is not that he becomes a statue or an inanimate object. It means that the actions just flow through the person. There is no deep sense of self-conscious identification with those roles. Something has been done. Okay, it has been done. So actions just flow through the person. Whereas in contrast, when this I thought is very strong and present in all the person's actions, what it implies is that the sense of ownership is very strong. I did this with great success, or I did this and it was such a big failure. So those two kinds of analysis, self-analysis, self-judgment is there continuously. On the other hand, when I discover this truth that I am not just a doer, okay, I have the privilege of doing. I have this power, the Kriya Shakti, that I can do various things, but that alone does not define me. There is a truth about me which is not just I am the doer. There is something more to it. So when each of us discovers that I am the doer is not the real fact about oneself, that's what we call renunciation of the I thought. And then actions just happen spontaneously with much less affectation, with much less obstruction. We can say we become transparent instruments in the hands of the Guru, transparent instruments in the hands of Ishvara. So that is why all this talk, remember, is not so abstract or not so impossible for each one of us. In fact, there are many things where we are already getting a glimpse of this freedom from doership. Whenever in your life you experience a few moments when everything seems okay, in place, together, you're not doing anything in particular, but you have no resistance to what is. You have no resistance to accepting all things as they are. At that point, already that I thought is very weak. No doubt, it's not the end of the journey of jnana, but that's a very helpful milestone, a helpful marker, if you like. So those moments when you're able to resolve, at least temporarily, this sense of doership, that's very helpful. Make a note of that. Try and recollect, and even in meditation, have that same spirit. I am not just the doer, I am the pure self, which is incidentally the doer. And Bhagavan went on to give the well-known, famous dream example. Even as in a dream, one appears to fall head downwards, while in reality one is unmoving, so also the ignorant person, that is the person for whom the I thought has not ceased, although he remains alone in constant meditation, is in fact one who performs all empirical actions. Thus, the wise ones have said. So, we always think, so Bhagavan had not studied the Shastra. Well, he was an avatar, he was not different from Brahman. And so this verse is from the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan, of course, knew the Bhagavad Gita. He actually was quoting saying, Karmanya karmaya pashyed akarmani cha karmayaha sabuddhiman manusyeshu sayuktaha kritsna karma krita. He performs all empirical actions. The one who sees inaction in action, says Sri Krishna in the Gita. And one who sees action in inaction, somebody who is quote unquote lazy or given to certain sloth and lack of initiative, well, that's not absence of doership. He is in fact very awarefully, or even if it's not, very deliberately choosing not to act. So merely not acting doesn't mean there is no doership. And so Krishna says that one who sees action even in just not doing anything, because the sense of doership has not gone away. So Bhagavan says, Krishna says, that is also a kind of action. And the one you see that truth of that, and similarly, one who also sees that in doing actions there can be inaction. In other words, I am not the doer. So he has grasped the essence of non-doership. The great skill of non-doership has been grasped, understood, assimilated by this wise person. Krishna says, that person, karmani akarmaya pashe, even while there is action, he sees there is no action. I am not the doer. That person is the wise. Sayuktaha, he is together. Yuktaha is a beautiful word in the Gita. It means one who is together, composed, collected. Bhagavan was often fond of using a similar word. Be in yourself. In other words, you're complete and full and surrendered to the present moment. You are not centered in everything around you. Your center of gravity is right here in the heart. That is being yuktaha. And so that yuktaha is referenced here by Bhagavan saying, he alone is in constant meditation and is in fact the one who performs all empirical actions. So yuktaha kritsna karma krit. So he has as good as done all the actions because he has attained the acme, the culmination of all actions. So we might think the success attained in, let's say, doing a great big business or influencing a lot of people is a very big action. But no, says Bhagavan here, the one who has discovered non-doership is the greatest person who has done all actions possible. Not just the one who does and achieves so-called big things in life. So this is the vision of the Advaita Sampradaya, which Bhagavan was so clearly teaching here, that the one who discovers non-doership has in effect done every single action in the world and attained that completion. He no longer has to do anything. Thus the wise ones have said. So the wise one there is Krishna, who has quoted, he has said that. Now the question 15, we will study this new question in today's session. The mind, sense organs, etc. have the ability to perceive, yet why are they regarded as perceived objects? So the mind and the senses have the ability to perceive, and yet in your teaching, Bhagavan, the disciple is asking, they are also treated as perceived objects. So we sometimes get used to many ideas of Bhagavan and Vedanta, that the answer seems kind of, okay, it's something I already know, but it's still helpful to just go from the basics and see what is Bhagavan saying in answer to this question. How can the mind and senses be looked at or understood as perceived objects? Drishyas. Okay, the original word is drishyas. Drishyas are perceived objects. So Bhagavan goes on to give, in brief, a column, a tabular column saying that with respect to external objects such as the body, which is the physical object, or a pot, which is seen outside, ghata, all such objects, this organ, the physical sense organ called the eye, which is in Sanskrit known as the Indriya Golaka. Indriya Golaka is the physical sense organ consisting of the lens and the retina and the eyeball and all of that. That is really the instrument, the perceiver there. And the pot or the physical body become the perceived drishya. And so in a typical transaction, when you see a pot outside, the sense organ which is physical, remember, such as the eyeball and the lens and the retina, as I said, that becomes the drik or the perceiver. But then look again. And who is it that even recognizes the fact that the eyes are open, the eyes are closed, or that I can even see? You know, the person who was having a severe macular degeneration or one of the other serious eye ailments, and finally they did probably a cataract operation. It could have been cataract. So they replaced the lens with an intraocular lens. And then after the eye operation is complete, the doctor slowly unbandages the eye and he opens his eyes. And then he tells him, do you see anything or do you not see anything? The doctor has to finally surrender to the patient and ask him. He doesn't have an automatic mechanism of knowing whether the operation has been successful or were there some other hidden factors which obstructed the success of the operation. And so he asked the patient, does your eye see or does it not see? And the patient says, yes, I see. Or if it was not fully properly done, he might say, I do not see. Then they have to do something about that. And so how does the person know that he sees or he does not see? So there is a mind which alone can make out the difference of whether the sense of perception is even there or not there. So that is referenced in the second column or second row here, where Bhagavan says that with respect to the eye, to the very sense of sight, the eye becomes an object. And the sense of perception, which is the indriya, which is part of the subtle body, that becomes the seer. And so to hark back to where we started with respect to the pot, it is the lens and the retina that is the seer or perceiver. Go deeper, how does the person even know that the eye is seeing or not seeing? There's a sense of perception. By sense, we mean a subtle power. You have a subtle power to make out whether you see or you don't see. And only through that, actually, the physical eyeball works. The lens and the retina, they're able to give you that information because of that power of perception that you have. And so that is known as the chakshurindriya. It's part of the subtle body. And so that Bhagavan calls the sense of sight. Because you have that power, you decide, okay, my eyes are seeing, my eyes are not seeing. Even when your eyes are seeing, there is also another example you can take. Now, people talk of total immersion in something. So, for example, you find a person very deeply immersed in, let's say, his mobile phone, and he is completely hearing and listening and seeing what is on his mobile phone screen. Even if someone were to call out his name, of course, the ear will receive the vibrations of sound denoting his name, and it will send a signal. The ear, the tympanum, along with the other sensory nerves there, will get activated, and the brain receives the same sound signal in an electrical form. But then after that, he still doesn't even remember his name was called, because his mind was not joined to the ear as a sense organ. It was immersed in the vision or the sight or perhaps the sound, but elsewhere. But the point is that unless the mind is joined to the sense of perception, you do not actually see, even if everything else is working. So that's another way of making out how you have this two-level process of perception. The physical organ, which is the eyeball, and then there is a subtle organ called the chakshurindriya. So whenever in Sanskrit or any spiritual literature, you hear or you read the word, the sense of perception, the sense organ, the indriya, all of these words are not physical words. They do not denote any physical object at all. They denote an object or an entity of the subtle body called the indriya. The indriyas are not physical, they are on the sukshma sharira, subtle body. Okay, so this second level of perception is how the sense of the sight, only if it is there, that indriya is able to then make out that the eye, stimulate the eye and make the eyeball give the information. Then that very chakshurindriya is again stimulated now by the mind. So that example which I quoted earlier encompasses both these levels, where first you have a mind which recognizes the presence and absence of sight. That chakshurindriya goes and activates or stimulates the eyeball and the retina. So this is how in the traditional model, we have an inside-out model of perception, not outside-in. First, there is mind, till where we have come. That mind recognizes both the presence and absence of the power of perception, manifest in the eyeball, of course. That sense of perception will go and activate or manifest through the eyeball. So this two-level flow is there, which is what Bhagavan is referring to here. And then that mind, which is behind the sense of perception, that mind alone, like I gave you that example, knows whether I see or I do not see, whether the eyes are working, I have the capacity to perceive or not. That is resting in the mind. And like I said, through this two-step, you get information from the external world. But then what about the mind itself? Is the mind the perceiver always? No, says Bhagavan. Even the fact that the mind was steady or unsteady, or the mind was restless, the mind was quiet, unquiet, how do you know all of that? How do you know that, oh yes, my mind felt very relaxed yesterday? How do you know that? That is because You are the sakshi or the witness of even the mind. You recollect, my mind was this way yesterday, or even a few minutes ago. You might say, my mind was having these thoughts a few minutes back. So it is that you, the sakshi, the witness, who knows the various changes in the mind. The changes in the mind are seen and understood by the unchanging you, the individual soul, you have to say. Even that individual soul is still tied up with that particular body. And so Bhagavan goes on to say, if we analyze or try to understand what is the essence of that individual soul, it is appreciated as just formless consciousness, the self. So this 4-step analysis is presented here, where first we have external part, then the eye as a sense organ, the retina and the lens. Then the second stage is the power of perception becomes the seer. Analyzed further, the mind which knows whether the power of perception is manifest or unmanifest, that becomes the seer. Then going further, it is the individual who knows my mind was this way, my mind was that way. That is the seer. Going still further, the truth of that individual perceiver, witness is that he is not an individual, he is formless, limitless awareness. So that is the last step in this drishya viveka, as it's called, discriminating the seen from the seer. In this way, a person can carefully arrive at I as formless awareness here and now. It's not a theory, it's something that in my own experience, if you like, here and now, it is evident. So Bhagavan goes on to say, as shown in the above scheme, since we, the consciousness, know all the objects, we are said to be the drik knower. The categories ending with the pot are the objects seen. So the categories are, first I said no, pot, and then you have the eye, and then the sense of perception, and then the mind. So all these categories are the objects, since they are what are known. In the table of knowledge, colon ignorance, that is knower and known. So sometimes this duality or this notation is used, where knowledge is chit and known becomes jada, or what is called ignorance in certain contexts. So we can just stick to knower and known pairs. Okay? These pairs of knower knowns given above in the table are the knower and known pairs. Let me just reiterate. In the table of knowledge is to ignorance, that is knower known given above. Among the knowers and objects of knowledge, it is seen that one is knower in relation to another. None of these categories is in reality the knower, although we are said to be the knower because we know all, and not the known because we are not known by anything else. Therefore, we are said to be the knower only in relation to the known objects. In truth, however, what is called the known is not apart from us. And so we are the reality that transcends those two categories of knower and known. All the others fall within the knower known categories. Yeah. So it might sound technical, but remember, always relate anything that is said by Bhagavan to your immediate experience. And so recognize how even as you meditate, your first distractions would be perhaps sounds from the outside or your perceptions of the environment. So the first step you do towards arriving at the self in meditation as a sadhana would be try and recognize all that is perceived externally is just drishyaha. Drishyaha means perceived objects. They can be kept away outside. They are there. I don't allow them to disturb me. They are where they are. I allow them to be. I come back one step inside. On the other hand, if I'm identified with what is around me, then I have lost the script there. If someone says something which disturbs me, even if it's a conversation going on around me, then I am involved with that conversation. And so the first step in sadhana in this Drik Drishya Viveka, coming back to oneself in Bhagavan's Prakriya would be that whatever external sights and sounds are there, you allow them to be as they are without fighting them, without having an agenda for them. Allow them to be there. Come back to your physical body itself. Notice how your physical body is and recognize and find a little comfort, at least for a while, just being sitting quietly, noticing the breath. All of that is the second level or category, as Bhagavan says, of perception. And then come back to the third level, which is you start to notice how your mind is in that present moment. So many thoughts might come and go. So for a while, allow the mind to just be. Look at it like a little child. Do not try to condemn the mind. Oh, why is my mind restless? Because if you do that, you're adding one more layer of thought to the mind. Instead, you recognize this is how my mind is. What did you do earlier? This is how my body is. First, allow the body to be for a while, a minute or two, and then recognize the mind. This is how my mind is. And then start to notice that awareness which is in and through all the thoughts. Is it displaced? Does it go away when the thoughts come and go? No. So I just shift my attention from the various thoughts and the content of those thoughts. I stop worrying about the content of the thoughts. Instead, recognize that these thoughts are coming and going in that awareness, which is the essence of truth. If necessary, you can recollect the words of the Guru to that effect. How Bhagavan has said that the self which is in the heart is unchanging. So different words of Bhagavan can be helpful cues there, cues to help us leave the mind alone. Let it be what it is. Come back to yourself to be what you are. And so there in this Drik Drishya process, you slowly draw back into yourself. And then the core practice of self-inquiry really takes off. Who or what am I? That very inward turning attitude of questioning leads to resolution of the mind. In the light of all that one has done, Shravanam, or understood and appreciated, drawing back and coming back to oneself is sufficient to be grounded in that non-dual self. Remember, all that is called Shravanam is a prerequisite. Otherwise, we might feel a little lost at that last stage. But if you have that Shravanam background, then as you draw back and just come and say, what am I? That is sufficient. You don't have to verbalize an answer, because the answer was already appreciated through the grace of the Guru, the words of the Guru. So yes, this prakriya therefore of Drik Drishya Viveka, the seer and seen, is very helpful even as we practice meditation to come back to oneself. And like I hinted at the beginning of this talk, one of the critical steps here is to see that many of the roles I play are not defining me. So much of the problems doesn't come from mere objects around me. They come from my identification with these roles. So that's where I may need to spend a little time trying to unload these roles from my mind. All that is part of this Drik Drishya Viveka process, where you're trying to arrive at the self. So all others fall within the knower known category. So whenever you're still seeing something other than you, there is a knower known. At the last stage, what happens, that which is known, the known object, is recognized as not separate from awareness. Any object you see, it arises in awareness, it goes away in awareness. Have you known or experienced any object apart from consciousness or awareness? No. Have you known or experienced any sound or any kind of perception, any thought, even which is apart from awareness? Can you visualize an object which doesn't arise or doesn't exist, is not experienced in awareness? We cannot. The very moment we try to visualize or think of an object or we experience an object, awareness is there already. It's a priori. It's before the fact of any experience. And so all known objects are recognized as merely names and forms that just arise and flow away in awareness, which is not part of the knower known categories. So that's what Bhagavan here says. All the others, meaning even the mind and the senses, all of them are knower known categories. Either they are known, then they become they are knowns, and then they become knowers. And you go on drawing back to the self. And this is therefore a very helpful understanding. Drishya, Viveka. This whole question is about that. Then we have the next question, the 16th question here. How do egoity, soul, self, and Brahman come to be identified? So the disciple is asking for some more clarity about these words often used in the tradition. So for our understanding, the word egoity is a synonym for ahankara. It's sometimes translated as just ego, but the word ego has a negative emotional connotation. But the word ego, it is a neutral word. Just the very fact that I am an individual, there is egoity. And then there's a complicated individual there, you can call that ego. But these two words, ego and egoity, are used interchangeably sometimes. But here it is a neutral word. Egoity is just ahankara. Ahankara means the mix-up between consciousness and matter, giving rise to this individual. Yeah. So this is one word. Then we have soul. Soul here would be jiva. So you have ahankara, then you have jiva, then you have the self or atma, and then Brahman. So the disciple is asking, what are all these words? So much jargon is there. Can we make some sense out of it in an unambiguous way? And Bhagavan gives an analogy to explain these words so that whenever we hear these words, we have a certain clear picture of what's being said. Bhagavan says, the iron ball, imagine or visualize an iron ball, ayashpinda. That iron ball, if it is the egoity, the heated iron ball is that soul which appears as a superimposition on the self, which means that the iron ball itself cannot do anything unless it has heat. Okay, in a blacksmith shop, we recognize that there's a lump of iron, then it is heated in fire, then it becomes luminous. Even if it's taken out of the fire considerably farther away, it will continue to shine with a lot of luminosity because of the high temperature it has been subjected to. And so the example there is that ayashpinda, the iron ball, is just the ahankara which is at that level still inactive. That is the way Bhagavan is giving that example. Then the heated iron ball is the soul which appears as a superimposition on the self, meaning it develops all these different powers. It has all these different capacities to think and so on. That is the example of the ahankara which is trying to become active. The third example is the fire that is there in the heated iron ball. So in this heated iron ball, there are two things, the heat and the iron ball. It's a mix-up between the energy or the heat and an inert iron ball. And so that heat itself is what Bhagavan says, the light of consciousness, which is shining in the soul of everybody. And so therefore, in every human being, there is this mix-up between matter and consciousness. Matter here is the iron ball. Consciousness is the heated iron, the heat of the heated iron ball. So that example is often used, the ayashpinda, and it is tapta ayashpinda. Tapta ayashpinda is the heated iron ball. The heat refers to consciousness, which has, as it were, become embedded in that iron ball. You cannot separate the heat so easily from the iron ball. It seems to be intrinsic to the iron ball, but it's not. And then Bhagavan says the flame or fire which remains as one. So that source of the heat is the flame or the fire, which has been borrowed by that iron ball. After some time, it will cool off and again become an inert entity. And so Bhagavan says that original undying flame of fire, which is just one, and there are so many different iron balls, right, which can get heated up in a blacksmith shop. So that fire is Brahman. So this is the metaphor here. And it's helpful because it's difficult to separate matter and consciousness in our own lived experience. It may be easy to do that with respect to the body, at least. Physical body, perhaps most people recognize, okay, I am not just the body is inert, kind of makes sense, although there's more to it even there, but for now we go with that. But then when it comes to the mind, which as Bhagavan indicated is also inert, the mind is also part of the subtle body, which is also inert. It can be considered matter, if you like, at a higher state of vibration. It is an informal way of saying it, but you can say it is a more refined form of matter alone. Refined because it's less easy to perceive, less evident, but nevertheless very real. And so that mind is also matter alone. That mind gets its energy, its capacity to perceive, to know, to think from awareness alone. Awareness animates the mind, even as the heat animates the iron ball to illuminate and to become luminous. So that is the metaphor here. So remember these three examples or these three aspects to that heated iron ball. The iron ball is dead, physical body, the heat itself, awareness, they become fused, inseparable as though. From the examples given above, says Bhagavan, it will be clear how egoity, soul, witness, and all witness, meaning the witness in all bodies, come to be identified. And Bhagavan then goes on to explain that very analogy. Just as in the wax lump that is with the smith, numerous and varied metal particles lie included, and all of them appear to be one wax lump. So also in deep sleep, the gross and subtle bodies of all the individual souls are included in the cosmic Maya, which is nescience of the nature of sheer darkness. And since the souls are resolved in the self, becoming one with it, they see everywhere darkness alone. From the darkness of sleep, the subtle body, that is the ahankara, and from that ahankara, the gross body arise respectively. So that's a lot of ideas there. We will just see a little bit of that in more detail. So Bhagavan says that just as you have a lump in which everything is fused together, he uses the word wax lump to indicate the mold in which everything is kept together. And so initially the blacksmith has all the different metal objects just fused together, just a lump. One of the interesting symbolisms I'll draw your attention to is how we have the worship of the Shiva Linga. And today, especially many recent Hindus themselves don't know clearly what is the significance of the Shiva Linga. So we have in the Rudram and other places the clear references in the Dhyana Shloka of the Rudram, for example, where it says all these forms are merged together. If you take a child, give him plasticine. Plasticine is this, toy clay, and he makes these different objects of plasticine. That's the, playing clay for children. And then he makes a different, object like a clay duck or a clay pot or a clay spoon and so on. At the end of the game, he's tried all the plasticine is mixed up and again made into one lump. What is the shape of that lump likely to be? It's likely to be round, oval. And so when all the names and forms of this universe are merged again at the end of creation, also at the beginning, that is the Shiva Linga. The Shiva Linga is therefore the original egg, the cosmic egg, the Brahmanda, in which all the names and forms are present in a seed form. From that Shiva Linga, everything has come. This is one symbolism of why it's in the shape of a linga. And so here that very metaphor is referenced, saying even in the blacksmith shop, initially all the names and forms are merged in one lump. So all of them appear to be one wax lump. So also in deep sleep, the gross and subtle bodies are included in the cosmic Maya. So in the deep sleep, for now, take it as a cosmic deep sleep. Then we'll talk of the individual. So at the beginning of creation, there is a cosmic deep sleep where everything is just merged in ignorance or avidya, the Maya. And from that alone, the Srishti has come. This whole universe of names and forms has come. Same goes even for the individual. In our own experience of deep sleep, all these different names and forms you experience are getting resolved into that. Really speaking, even this physical body, even what you think of as the mind and so on, all of them do not have any separate existence. So in a sense, you cannot really say it's my deep sleep because you yourself are resolved into that deep sleep. It's just deep sleep. So Sushupti, therefore, is not different from the Pralaya Avastha. So, which is why in that Sushupti Avastha, meaning deep sleep state, you cannot really own up my individual identity there. All of us are really merged in deep sleep. And as far as you're concerned, your deep sleep is the only deep sleep that exists. Out of that alone, this whole world has come out. So Bhagavan follows the Drishti Srishtivada as we saw earlier. We'll see that later. But for now, just stay with the simple meaning here. That in deep sleep, all these names and forms have become merged into ignorance. And they are resolved in the self, becoming one with it. They see everywhere darkness alone because the names and forms are not present there. No mind. If mind is there, they can reflect consciousness. If there's no mind, consciousness remains, but there is no reflecting medium for thinking and experiencing. From the darkness of sleep, it's a subtle body that is egoity. And then from that egoity, the gross body too arises, respectively. Even as the egoity arises, it appears superimposed on the nature of the self like the heated iron ball. So Bhagavan here says that even as in a dream or even in the waking, from that consciousness, you come out as an individual. You never are without a body. The moment you experience yourself in the world, there's a body and there's a whole time space world around you. It is a sudden manifestation of all this, including even your own mind body. So therefore, the egoity, that is your ahankara, comes along with consciousness. It's not as if it can come and then consciousness enters it. It's not a temporal sequence there. At one go, I become an individual and I am conscious. It's like a magical process. We do not know how or when it occurs, but I am there. I experience the world. So they go together. That's what Bhagavan says, that even as the egoity, the ahankara arises, it appears superimposed on the nature of the self, like the heated iron ball. So here the example is the heated iron ball, remember? And so you cannot separate the heat from the iron ball there. Thus, without the soul, which is the mind or egoity that is conjoined with consciousness. So now next word. So what is the jiva? The jiva is the mix-up, the inseparable unity between consciousness and the egoity or the individual mind. So the jiva therefore is the combined mixed-up entity. Thus, without the soul, the jivatma or jiva, which is the mind or egoity that is conjoined with the consciousness, there is no witness. So there's no question of talking of any witness of the soul, that is the self. And without the self, there is no Brahman, which is the all witness. So here he is saying that, Bhagavan is saying that you cannot, as I said, separate the two at the prima facie level. By discrimination, of course, one separates them. But at the prima facie level, there is no separation between consciousness and the mind which is reflecting it. Even as a mirror reflects the sun, you cannot separate the mirror from the sun. The mirror and the sun are seen at the same time. And then, as Bhagavan says, there is no witness of the soul, that is the self, and without the self, there is no Brahman. So now he has explained the jiva, which is the reflected awareness. Now, that reflected awareness, when it is recognized as the source of light, it is recognized as the source of light for all the minds. Okay, it's not as if I have one self, somebody else has another self. So Bhagavan is saying the self is just one, reflecting in all these different minds. So there is no Brahman that is the all witness. So first you arrive at the witness in or within your own heart, what you are. Then it is recognized as the witness of all. So there is a two-step arrival or understanding there. So that is why Bhagavan would say, as you inquire, what am I, in the light of the teaching of the Guru, you arrive at first the pure witness, the Shuddha Sakshi. Then that Shuddha Sakshi, in the light of the teaching which is already grasped, is discovered or resolves as the all witness. Bhagavan's word is all witness, Sarva Sakshi. He is the witness of all that exists. Just as when the iron ball is beaten into various shapes by the smith, the fire that is in it does not change thereby in any manner. Even so, the soul may be involved in ever so many experiences and undergo pleasures and pains, and yet the self that is in it does not change in the least. So, and like the ether, it is the all-pervasive pure knowledge that is one, and it shines in the heart as Brahman. And so this is very helpful to recognize that consciousness doesn't undergo any change, even though the most difficult of emotions of pain or even pleasure are being undergone at the level of the mind. So Bhagavan says that if the luminous ball of iron in the blacksmith shop is beaten, there's a lot of suffering that ball of iron in the blacksmith shop is being subjected to, and is beaten into various different shapes, still that energy is not thereby affected. That the same luminous energy will then continue in all the different names and forms, because it is coming from one single fire or furnace. That is here analogous to the self, which is non-dual. And so even so, in your own experience or in your own awareness, if you recognize that in and through all that I undergo, that awareness never leaves me. And that awareness is not just dry or boring or uninteresting. On the other hand, whenever we experience any kind of frustration or any kind of saturation or boredom, it's with something else other than oneself. I can be bored only with some object. It could be even some mental state perhaps, but I can never be bored with the self. The self is the most interesting reality. The more we can focus and turn inwards to the reality of the self, there is never-ending stream of joy, a never-ending stream of happiness and satisfaction. And so recognizing that that self is untouched by your past story, history, or whatever there is, that self remains the same locus of joy and locus of unchanging balance there, equanimity there. The more we recognize and arrive at that, the more I can allow the flow of the mind to have its play. So Bhagavan repeatedly asks us, therefore, to have that practice of arriving at the self step by step, if you like. And as you become more accomplished, you could probably just jump directly and turn your attention directly to the self in just one leap, if you like. But all the other preceding steps of Drishya Viveka, discrimination between the known and the knower, are very helpful in arriving at that pure non-dual self, which is here and now. It is not another experience which you have to gain in any way. It's more a matter of letting go what you are not, letting go of your roles in your life, at least temporarily. And if you discover that freedom, that your amazing capacity to set aside these roles, you have done it. You have managed to imbibe this teaching of Bhagavan, of discovering that I am non-dual, that Aham Advitiyam Brahma. So with this, we will continue this study in the next class. So we will end with the Shanti Mantra. Namada Namidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Namo Ramana Raghavji. Sir, we have got two questions on the YouTube channel by Sushil Motwani ji. Is it okay to put them to you now?
Yes. If you could just read out the question, it will be helpful.
Sure, sir. So Sushil Motwani ji is asking, and I quote, Namo Ramana Raghavji, is the heated iron ball an example of Vishisht Advaita or Advaita? And the second question is, also, when the body dies, what is it that transmigrates? Unquote.
Yeah. Okay. So in these, I'll answer the second question first. There are two ways of answering the second question. One is what is known, I would use the word a destructive way of answering the question. Ultimately, perhaps the destructive way of answering a question only really works, but which is that who is it that is asking this question? Does this question really matter? Or what is it that I experience here and now? So the destructive, not in a negative sense, but to deconstruct that question is what Bhagavan would often do, because he had this two-pronged approach to answering these questions as well. So in any case, just to put it briefly, the answer we need to the question we need to ask is, do I even transmigrate? Do I even go anywhere? What is it that is experienced here and now? And if one focuses on that, one discovers I am not even within time. Time is in me, I am not in time. So once you discover that, there's no question of any transmigration even. That is the ultimate answer really to that question. Why? Because if we answer that question, there's another question, a follow-up is possible to that. And the question goes on and on, because our mind has a tendency to go on forming very beautiful frameworks and conceptual ideas by which it makes some sense of the world. But Bhagavan tries to draw one's attention to the truth. I'm not even in time. Am I even born that I transmigrate? He would often answer like that. Having said that, Bhagavan also occasionally gives what is a constructive answer to the question. And that is, who or what transmigrates? The simple answer is, there is a sukshma sharira, the subtle body. So the model here is that what you call as I, here and now, what you experience as yourself, has a physical body which is evident to the other persons. They can only see you as a physical body. There is also a power of prana or life force. So that is the one part of the subtle body called prana. Okay? Because of prana, all the organs are working in unison in an integrated way. When there's imbalance in the prana, there is ill health. So that's not evident outwardly, at least not easy. But prana is also there, which is an invisible energy or force which brings order and integrity to the physical body. Going deeper, there is something called mind. So this mind itself is also a subtle power riding on this prana. Where there is prana, the mind also can ride or use that prana to manifest as a jiva. And so this subtle body consists of prana and the mind. Okay. So mind I am referring to in a generic way, the entire lot of the other, the Antakarna Chatushtayam as we call it. So the entire mind process is all part of the subtle body. Also prana part of the subtle body. So at the end of the lifespan, the physical body starts deteriorating and becomes incapable of supporting the karmic journey. So it's not so much only based on deterioration of the physical body. There is a deeper mysterious process called the end of the karma, which has brought about that physical body. That karma clock, kind of ends there, which is why a person even early at a young age can have to leave the body, or in a very old age, some people survive like that. So the karmic clock really decides the lifespan. And at the end of the karmic clocks, you can say, duration, the subtle body consisting of the prana and manas become like a seed form. In other words, they become like an unmanifest form, and they get connected instantaneously to the next physical embodiment, which could be in this world or another world. So that which transmigrates is the subtle body, the Sukshma Sharira, which consists of the prana, the life force, and the manas and buddhi, the entire lot of what is collectively called mind in English. So that's what transmigrates, so to speak. And yes, then the first question, the first part of the question, the Ayahpinda, the heated iron ball. Well, it's better not to say Vishishtadvaita, but you can, if you want to say Vishishtadvaita as a philosophy, it's different. They are saying that all that exists here in this world is like a tree. There's one tree in the world. That tree has a lot of internal differentiation. So this tree of this universe has internal differentiation. It's very close to Advaita, very nice, beautiful in a way. But they get into sectarian thinking, that Vishnu is the only reality. That's where we object. Otherwise, by itself, Vishishtadvaita is neutral. It has its own beauty and validity. But Advaita goes further. It says Vishishtadvaita is a stepping stone where you come further and say even internal differentiation is not there. So even the existence of different objects is not like different leaves of a tree and branches of a tree. So Vishishtadvaita Advaita stops there with the tree analogy. Advaita says even the tree is resolved into one non-dual reality. Coming to the luminous Ayahpinda, you can say that consciousness which is associated with an upadhi, which is here the luminous iron ball. So it is not Advaita because there are two things there. Okay, there is consciousness and there is a matter. So it is a stepping stone to Advaita. That is why all these analogies of Bhagavan are stepping stones to arrive at that non-dual self, where none of these analogies really directly can point to that reality. So that is why at best we can say the Vishishtadvaita concept in this luminous iron ball would be that there is a consciousness which is associated as it were with matter and reflects itself in that matter. To that extent, yes, it can be called Vishishtadvaita, not as a philosophical framework, but in the form of just an idea there.
Raghavji, thank you for your response and guidance. And of course, as always, many thanks for addressing us and taking us through one of the most significant uh, books in which Bhagwan has provided such lucid advice, guidance, and direction to all the devotees. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Namo Ramana. Now I shall request Mr. Krishnan at the Delhi Raman Kendra Shrine to conclude today's satsang with Aksharmanamalai and Arati.
अरुणाचलवरक्केच अक्षरमणमालेशात् करुणागरगणपति परमरुणिकापाये अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल அருணாச்சல மென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சல அழகு சுந்தரம் போல் அகமும் நீயுக்கு பின்னமாயிருக்கோ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல ஜகம்பூண்டீட்டுன் அககுவை சிறையாய் அமர்வித்ததென் கொல் அருணாச்சல ஆருகாயனை ஆண்டனை அகத்திடில் அகிலம் வழித்திடும் அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல இப்படி தப்புனை ஏன் நினைப்பித்தாய் இனி யார் விடுவார் அருணாச்சல ஈன்றிடும் அன்னையின் பெரிதருள் புரிபோய் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல உனையே மாற்றி ஊடாதுலத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சல ஊசூற்றுளம்பிடா உனை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல என்னை அழித்திப்போ என்னை கலவாவிடில் இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சல ஏனிந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறழ்கிழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல ஐம்புல கள்வர் அகத்தினில் புகும்போர் அகத்தினில் இளையோ அருணாச்சல உருவன முன்னை ஒளித்தவர் வருவார் உன்சூதே இது அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல ஓங்கார பொருள் ஒப்புயல் இல்லோய் உனையார் அறிவார் அருணாச்சல ஔவை போல் எனக்குன் அருளை தந்தனை ஆளுவதும் கடன் அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமணமாலை வாழி வாழ்க சுயம் பிரகாசம் வாழ்க வாழ்கவே சூர்க சுதாத்ம சக்தி சூர்க சூர்கவே வாழ்க சுயம் பிரகாசம் வாழ்க வாழ்கவே சூர்க சுதாத்ம சக்தி சூர்க சூர்கவே ஏழுலகும் ஜீவன் முக்தி இன்பம் பொங்கவே ஏழுலகும் ஜீவன் முக்தி இன்பம் பொங்கவே இதயமாகும் இறைவனாகி எல்லாம் ஓங்கவே இதயமாகும் இறைவனாகி எல்லாம் ஓங்கவே பாழ்மன அகந்தை வாழ்வு பாழ்பட்டொழிகவே பாழ்மன அகந்தை வாழ்வு பாழ்பட்டொழிகவே பரமசச்சிதானந்தாத்மபால் மொழிகவே பரமசச்சிதானந்தாத்மபால் மொழிகவே வாழ்க சூயம் பிரகாசம் வாழ்க வாழ்கவே சூர்க சுத்தாத்ம சக்தி சூர்க சூர்கவே தட்டிலாத நித்ய ஜீவ தத்துவமோங்கவே தட்டிலாத நித்ய ஜீவ தத்துவமோங்கவே தன்மயத்து சின்மயந்தழைக்கிலங்கவே தன்மயத்து சின்மயந்தழைக்கிலங்கவே எட்டு தீபம் அம்சசோகம் எதிரொலிக்கவே எட்டு திக்கும் சசோகம் எதிரொலிக்கவே எல்லா பிரம்மம் என்னும் உண்மை இறைவகிக்கவே எல்லா பிரம்மம் என்னும் உண்மை இறைவகிக்கவே வாழ்க சூயம் பிரகாசம் வாழ்க வாழ்கவே சூர்க சுதாத்ம சக்தி சூர்க சூர்கவே ஹம்சசோகம் அதுவே எல்லாம் ஹம்சசோகம். यश्चादवेदो वक्रं निर्धम्ममा अवोगुं सत्तमः आवहा जीवदञ्चोदिशः मानोगुंसि चादवेदो कामश्वं पुरुषं जगत् वेदसदा प्रागविषया मा परिपादय.
Namo Ramana. This brings us to the closure of today's satsang with Raghavji. We shall reconvene next month on the fourth Sunday with Raghavji to continue this journey. Namo Ramana.